This is the Solving Multi-Step Equation Quiz Part 2. So here's your help video if you're working on Part 2. It says, enter your answer and show all the steps that you use to solve this problem in the space provided. Write the steps in solving, and here's my equation, and then it says justify each step with an appropriate property. Now don't type what I'm about to type into your answer because notice I changed the number. So make sure you do this for your equation on your quiz. Don't just copy what I do. Okay, so I'm going to solve this equation. I'm going to draw my line down the equal sign and I'm going to box off my letter. I have a positive 7. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 7 from each side to get rid of that. And now when I want to justify it using the appropriate property, that's the subtraction property of equality. It just means whatever you do to one side of the equals, you can do to the other side. So that's the subtraction property of equality. Okay, and then I'm going to simplify. So I'm going to bring down the 5x. And a negative 33 minus 7 is a negative 40. So my next step was to simplify. Basically, I just did the subtraction. After that, let me make my line a little bit longer. After that, I need to get rid of the 5. Right now, I have 5 times x, so the opposite would be to divide. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide each side by 5. And that's called the division property of equality. And I'm just abbreviating this. And then after I use that division property of equality, I would just need to simplify. And then I have my final answer, x equals negative 8. So you're going to solve your equation and you're going to write out, justify each step with the appropriate property. Now it doesn't have to sound the exact same way. I typed up another thing down here. This could be another option. This one just is in sentence form. I use the subtraction property of equality to subtract 7 from each side of the equation. Then I simplified and got 5x equals negative 40. Next, I used the division property of equality to divide each side by 5. I simplified and I got x equals negative 8. So when you type it in, you can either type it out like I did up here where you solve the equation and you write the properties, or you can type it in using sentence form, whatever you're most comfortable with. Let's look at this next one. Enter your answer and show all the steps that you use to solve this problem in the space provided. We want to write the steps in solving this equation and we want to justify each step with the appropriate property. Now remember, I have changed numbers here, so do not put this as your answer in your quiz. Make sure you solve your quiz question. All right, but it is an equation, so I'm going to draw my line and I'm going to find my letter. And I actually have 2 here. I have 5n plus 5 more n. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to combine those like terms. 5n plus 5n gives me 10 n's. And then I'm just going to write down the rest. So my first step here was combine like terms. All right, now I'm going to keep solving this equation. So I need to get rid of the minus 7. The opposite of minus 7 is to add 7. So I'm using the addition property of equality. Then I'm going to simplify. So I'm bringing this straight down and I'm adding these together to get 80. So in that step, I just simplified. And then I'm going to use the division property of equality because right now I have 10 times n. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide each side by 10. And then lastly, I'm going to simplify one more time. The 10s will cancel. And 80 divided by 10 is 8. You can solve your equation that way and write out the property for each step, or you can write it in sentence form, and I'll just give you kind of an example of that. Because first I combined like terms by adding 5n plus 5n, and I got 10n minus 7 equals 73. Then I used the addition property of equality to add 7 to each side. I simplified and got 10n equals 80. Next, I used the division property of equality and divided each side by 10 to get n equals 8. These are just examples. Yours does not need to sound exactly like mine. I mean, honestly, if you just, for like this step where you add 7 to each side, if you just say add 7 to each side, that's fine. If you just say divide by 10, that's fine. You don't have to get super fancy or super technical, but you do have to write words for each step that you do. All right, I hope this helps.